My parents tricked me into signing over my inherited land to my brother, saying I was too careless to manage it. But when his debts ruined him and they ended up homeless, they demanded the landowner let them move onto their property. Their faces dropped when I showed them the gates and the new sign that read, "Tonight, at exactly 9:17 p.m., a knock on my door shattered 7 years of silence, and I knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that the moment I'd been living for had finally arrived. My family, shattered and desperate, stood on my pristine doorstep, a sight that, honestly, nearly made me laugh out loud. There was my mother, usually so perfect, with mascara streaking down her cheeks like war paint. My father's meticulously pressed shirt was wrinkled beyond recognition, and my brother, Jonah, looked like he hadn't slept in days. "We need to move home," Jonah choked out, his voice cracking. And then it hit me. This wasn't just a visit. This was their comeuppance. "Come in," I said, stepping aside, the contrast between their disheveled chaos and my meticulously organized living room almost poetic. I gestured to my leather sofa, the one I'd bought with my first big bonus as a senior marketing director. My mother started immediately, "Rosie, sweetheart." That saccharine, condescending diminutive I'd asked her to drop 1,000 times. "We've had some difficulties." Difficulties? I had to focus, channeling all those meditation techniques that had kept me sane for the past 7 years. I kept my voice neutral. "The market crashed," Jonah blurted out, unable to hold it in. "Everything's gone. The investments, the houses, even Mom and Dad's place." My father added quietly, "Everything, including the land." The land. Of course. A familiar tightness squeezed my chest, pulling me back to that day 7 years ago, sitting at our family's imposing oak dining table. "It's just a tax simplification, Rosie," Mom had said, sliding the papers toward me. "You know, your brother is better with the financial aspects. It'll still be family land." Jonah had stood behind her, arms crossed, that infuriating, patronizing smirk plastered across his face. "Come on, sis. You know I'll take care of everything. When have I ever steered us wrong?" My father, ever the enabler, had paused, choosing his words carefully. You're not quite ready for this kind of responsibility, sweetheart. Remember that art gallery idea of yours?" The memory of their synchronized headshaking still burned, a searing brand on my soul. "Sign here," Mom had pointed. "And here. It's still our land. We're just putting it under Jonah's name to simplify things." Even then, a gut feeling screamed that something was wrong. But years of being told I was flighty, irresponsible, too emotional, it warps you. It makes you doubt every single instinct. Back in the present, I watched them squirm on my expensive sofa. "So," I said slowly, savoring the words, "you need somewhere to stay." "Just until we get back on our feet," Jonah rushed to say. "A few months, tops. We can use the cottage on the old property." "The cottage?" My eyebrow arched. "On the land I signed over?" "Oh, well, yes," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "But that was just paperwork, darling. You know it's still family land." I stood up, walking to my desk. I pulled out a folder I'd kept ready for years. "Actually," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I've been meaning to talk to you about that land." "What's to talk about?" Jonah's voice had an edge now. "It was a family decision." "Funny thing about decisions," I said, opening the folder, "they have consequences." "Rosalie," Dad warned, using my full name for the first time in ages. "Don't be difficult." I laid 3 documents on the coffee table. The first, the transfer deed I signed. The second, a loan agreement dated 1 week later, using the land as collateral. The third, a recent property record. "What's this?" Mom picked up the third document, squinting. "That," I said, feeling 7 years of preparation culminate in this single, satisfying moment, "is proof that technically, none of you have any claim to that land anymore." Jonah snatched the paper from Mom. His face went from red to white in seconds. This can't be legal. Oh, but it is. I smiled, remembering all the late nights with Tiffany, my attorney, finding that perfect loophole. You see, when you used the land as collateral without telling me, you triggered a clause that invalidated the original transfer. And when the bank foreclosed, I spread my hands. Let's just say I had first right of refusal. You're bluffing. Jonah stood up, towering over me like he used to when we were kids. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Try me, I said softly. Or better yet, drive out there tomorrow. See for yourself. Mom started crying again. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. And Jonah? Jonah looked exactly like I had 7 years ago, when I realized what they'd done to me. You can stay at the Comfort Inn on 5th, I said, standing up. I'll cover 3 nights. That should give you time to make other arrangements. Rosalie, Mom whispered, we're family. I opened my front door. Yes, I said, my voice flat. You made that very clear when you had me sign those papers. Family first, right? They filed out one by one, shells of their former selves. As I closed the door, I heard Mom ask, what do we do now? I pressed my forehead against the cool wood and whispered, you're about to find out. The next morning, I poured myself into documenting everything, every desperate word, every contradictory explanation. My laptop screen filled with their excuses as I typed, a habit I'd developed after years of gaslighting taught me to trust only what was written down. The doorbell rang at 10 a.m. They were back, looking marginally more put together after a night at the hotel. Mom had even applied fresh lipstick. We need to talk about this rationally, Dad said as they settled onto my sofa again. You're being impulsive. I almost laughed. Impulsive? Like using inherited land as collateral without telling me? That's what we need to explain. Jonah leaned forward, his business voice on, the one he used to convince elderly investors to trust him with their life savings. It was a calculated risk. The market was perfect. Nobody could have predicted. Stop. I held up my hand. Just tell me exactly what happened from the beginning. Mom jumped in. It started with that wonderful opportunity Jonah found. Premium real estate development. Guaranteed returns. Guaranteed? I repeated, typing. The initial investment was solid, Jonah continued. We doubled our money in 6 months, so naturally, we expanded, took out more loans, bought more properties, using the family land as collateral. Well, yes, Dad shifted uncomfortably. But it was a sound business decision. Your brother knows what he's doing. Knew, I corrected quietly. Past tense. Jonah's face darkened. Look, the market crashed. It happens. But we can rebuild. We just need somewhere to regroup and that cottage. Tell me about the other properties, I interrupted. The ones you lost. They exchanged glances. Mom spoke first. Well, there was our house, of course, and the vacation home in Lake Tahoe. The apartment buildings downtown, Dad added. The retail space on 4th Street. All mortgaged to the hilt, I noted, still typing. And the investors? How do you know about the investors? My father's voice was sharp. I read the business section. I turned my laptop around, showing them a local news article. Particularly stories about failed investment schemes that leave retirees bankrupt. It wasn't a scheme. Jonah stood up, pacing. Everything was properly registered. We just got in over our heads. Sit down, I said quietly. He did, surprisingly. Honey, Mom reached for my hand. I pulled back. We know we should have told you about using the land, but we didn't want to worry you. You were always so emotional about things. Emotional. I let the word hang there. Like when I found out you'd used my inheritance as collateral 1 week after I signed it over? You found out? Dad's voice was sharp. I had a friend at the county records office. I pulled out another document. She sent me a copy the day it was filed. I've known for 7 years. The silence in the room was deafening. 7 years? Jonah whispered. You've been planning this for 7 years? Planning what? I asked innocently. I simply educated myself, learned about finance, law, business, all those things you said I was too flighty to understand. But why didn't you say anything? Mom's voice trembled. Would you have listened? I stood up, walking to my window. Or would you have told me I was being dramatic, oversensitive, paranoid? We were trying to protect you, Dad insisted. I turned back to them. No, you were protecting him. I pointed at Jonah. Like you always have. Now look where it's gotten you. So, this is revenge? Jonah sneered. Real mature, sis. Revenge would be pressing charges for fraud, I said calmly. This is just calmer. Mom started crying again. Please, Rosie. We have nowhere else to go. Actually, you do. I handed them each a printed sheet. I've made a list of affordable apartments in the area. There's also information about job placement services and financial counseling. Job placement? Dad looked offended. We're not charity cases. No, I agreed. You're just people who need to learn what it's like to start over. Like I did. Technically, Jonah said, his voice hard, you still signed that land over to me. I smiled for the first time. Technically, you signed it away when you used it as collateral without my knowledge. But please feel free to check with your lawyers. Oh, wait, I paused. They dropped you too, didn't they? They stared at me like they were seeing a stranger. Maybe they were. I have a meeting, I said, gathering my laptop. You can see yourselves out. At the door, Mom turned back. What happened to you, Rosie? Nothing happened to me, I replied. I just stopped letting you tell me who I was. As I closed the door, I heard Jonah say, she's bluffing about the land. She has to be. I smiled again, thinking about the construction crew starting work tomorrow. They'll find out soon enough. You found what? I remembered asking Sabrina 7 years ago, my hands shaking as I held the county records printout. They used the land as collateral exactly 1 week after you signed, she'd said, her voice crackling over the phone. I'm so sorry, Rosalie. That memory flooded back as I sat in Tiffany's office, watching my attorney spread documents across her desk. The afternoon sun caught her reading glasses as she pointed to various highlighted sections. The beauty of it, Tiffany said, is that they did all the work for us. The moment they used the property as collateral without your knowledge or consent, they violated the terms of the original transfer. But that was years ago, I said. Why didn't we act then? Tiffany smiled. Because waiting was smarter. We let them dig their own grave. Now, with a foreclosure, the property's vulnerable. And guess who's been quietly building the perfect business entity to acquire it? She slid a folder toward me. Inside was the paperwork for Harper Sanctum LLC, my new wellness retreat company. Sign here, she said, then caught herself. Sorry, bad choice of words. I laughed, but it was hollow. No, it's perfect. Actually, full circle. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I signed, not with hesitation, but with the weight of 7 years of planning. Now, Tiffany continued, about that cottage they mentioned. Already handled, I said. The demolition crew starts next week. You're not wasting any time. They didn't waste any time using my inheritance as collateral, I countered. Why should I waste time turning it into something better? My phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. Lunch. You need to tell me everything. 20 minutes later, I was sliding into our usual booth at Carlos Cafe, where Sabrina had already ordered my usual iced tea. Spill, she demanded. How did they look when they showed up? Broken, I admitted, but not sorry. Just desperate. And you're sure about this retreat center idea? I pulled out my tablet, showing her the renderings. Look at this. Solar-powered buildings, meditation gardens, workshop spaces. Everything I wanted to do with the art gallery they mocked me for. It's beautiful, she said softly. But what about the cottage? It's got black mold and a failing foundation, I finished. Keeping it would be a liability. That's not what I meant. And you know it. I set down my tea. They made their choices, Sabrina. For years, they chose Jonah's schemes over my stability. They chose manipulation over honesty. I know what they chose, she interrupted. I was there, remember? I watched you rebuild yourself. But this is different. This is justice, I said firmly. Is it, or is it? The cafe door chimed, and we both looked up. Jonah walked in, spotted me, and made a beeline for our table. We need to talk, he said, ignoring Sabrina completely. We already did. Twice. He planted his hands on our table. I spoke to a lawyer. He says there might be grounds to challenge. Let me guess, I interrupted. He wants a retainer. Money up front. I watched his face fall. That's what I thought. You can't just take everything, he hissed. Actually, I didn't take anything. You lost it. All of it. I'm just reclaiming what was mine to begin with. Sabrina cleared her throat. I think you should leave, Jonah. He straightened up, trying to recover his dignity. This isn't over. Actually, it is. I pulled up my phone and showed him the construction company's confirmation email. Demolition starts Monday. Demolition? His face went white. Of what? The cottage. It's a safety hazard. The whole property is being renovated for the retreat center. You're lying. Drive out there Monday morning, I suggested. Watch them tear it down. Maybe it'll help you understand how I felt 7 years ago watching you tear apart my trust. He stormed out, nearly knocking over a waitress in his haste. That was cold, Sabrina said quietly. No, I corrected her. Cold was watching them smile while I signed away my inheritance. Cold was discovering they'd already planned to use it as collateral. Cold was 7 years of them thinking they got away with it. And what about you? She asked. What happens after the demolition? After the retreat center's built, does it heal anything? I looked down at my tea, watching the ice cubes slowly melt. I'm not looking for healing. I'm looking for closure. Those aren't always different things, she said wisely. My phone buzzed again. An email from the permit office. Final approval for construction. It's done, I said, showing her the screen. No going back now. There never was, she replied. Not since the day they betrayed you. I stared out the cafe window, watching people pass by. Somewhere across town, my family was probably scrambling for solutions, calling in favors, realizing how many bridges Jonah had burned. Monday morning, I murmured. Everything changes Monday morning. The demolition crew arrived at dawn. I stood at the edge of the property, clipboard in hand, watching the machines roll in. The cottage looked smaller than I remembered, its weathered walls almost apologetic in the early morning light. Miss Harper, a deep voice behind me. I turned to find a tall man in a hard hat, work boots caked with mud. I'm Noel, the site supervisor. We spoke on the phone. Right, I said, shaking his offered hand. Everything ready to go? Just need your final signature. He handed me a form, studied my face as I signed. You sure about this? Old places like this, they hold a lot of memories. That's exactly why it needs to go. He nodded, not pushing further. Well, we'll start with the interior strip, then. A car screeched to a halt behind us. Mom's voice rang out. Stop! You can't do this. I turned to see my parents rushing toward us, Jonah right behind them. They looked like they hadn't slept. This is private property, I said calmly. You're trespassing. Private property? Dad sputtered. This is our family home. I corrected. Now it's the future site of Harper Sanctum Retreat Center. I gestured to the architectural renderings posted on a nearby board. Noel stepped forward, positioning himself slightly between me and my family. Folks, this is an active construction site. You'll need to leave. She's my daughter. Mom pleaded. This is just a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. Noel, please proceed as planned. He signaled to his crew. The machines roared to life. Wait! Jonah ran toward the cottage. 2 security guards I'd hired intercepted him. You'll regret this. Dad shouted over the noise. You're destroying your heritage. Heritage? I laughed. Like you destroyed my inheritance. The first wall came down with a thunderous crack. Mom screamed. I didn't flinch. Clear the site, Noel ordered the guards. They escorted my family back to their car. I watched until they drove away, then released a breath I didn't know I was holding. That was intense, Noel commented, still standing nearby. You okay? Fine, I straightened my jacket. The foundations need to be completely removed. We'll need solid ground for the new buildings. About that, he pulled out some blueprints. I had some thoughts about the meditation garden placement. Mind if I show you? We spent the next hour walking the property, Noel pointing out natural features I'd never noticed, the way the land sloped perfectly for a terrace garden, a cluster of old oaks that could shelter an outdoor yoga platform. You've really thought this through, I said, surprised. I like knowing the story behind my projects, he paused. Helps me build something that matters. And what story do you think this is? He looked at me directly. Redemption, maybe. Or resurrection. Taking something broken and making it beautiful again. That's surprisingly poetic for a contractor. I contain multitudes. He grinned. Speaking of which, want to grab coffee? These demolition days can be longer than you expect. I hesitated. I mean, I should stay and supervise. That's what you pay me for. He gestured to the crew, efficiently clearing debris. They know what they're doing. Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Sabrina. Turn on the local news, she said without preamble. I pulled up the stream on my phone. Jonah's face filled the screen, standing outside the property gates. My sister is destroying a historic family property, he was saying to a reporter. She's letting her emotions override common sense, just like she always has. Mute that, Noel said quietly. You don't need to hear it. But I kept listening as Jonah spun his tale of family discord and my supposed instability. It was the same story they'd always told, just with a bigger audience. Coffee sounds good, actually, I said, shutting off the stream. I know a place. Carlos. Away from the dust and noise. Noel asked the question I'd been dreading. Why a retreat center? Because they never thought I could run anything, I admitted. Every business idea I had, they shot down. Too risky, too emotional, too me. And now? Now I'm proving them wrong, on my terms. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. You know, I've built a lot of things for a lot of people. Most of them were running towards something. You seem to be running from something. Is there a difference? Usually is. He looked up. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a contractor who reads too much poetry. For the first time in days, I laughed genuinely. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, I'm guessing. To them, at least. He nodded toward the TV above the bar, still showing Jonah's interview. My phone buzzed. Photos from the site. The cottage was completely down now, just a blank space where it once stood. Clean slate, Noel commented, looking at the pictures. Question is, what are you going to build on it? I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift. Something true, I said finally. Something mine. He smiled. That's a good place to start. You're being hysterical, Rosie. Mom's voice echoed in my head as I sorted through old family photos. Always so dramatic about everything. I was in my home office, preparing for a meeting with my parents, one they didn't know about yet. The photos told a story they never wanted to see, Jonah front and center in every shot, me pushed to the edges, sometimes literally cropped out. My doorbell rang right on time. Come in. I called out. Sabrina entered, carrying a thick manila envelope. You sure about this? She asked, setting it down. Once you show them these documents, there's no going back. They crossed that line years ago. I opened the envelope, spreading out its contents. Did you find everything? Every email, every bank transfer, every hidden agreement. She pointed to one particular document. This one's the smoking gun. Dated 3 months before they had you sign over the land. The paper outlined their entire plan, using my emotional instability as grounds to gain control of my inheritance, then leveraging it for Jonah's business ventures, all laid out in my father's meticulous handwriting. Perfect timing, I said as my phone buzzed. They're here. Mom and Dad entered cautiously, looking less polished than usual. 2 weeks of hotel living will do that. What's this about, Rosalie? Dad asked, eyeing the papers on my desk. Sit down, I gestured to the chairs. We need to talk about what really happened 7 years ago. We've been through this, Mom. We were protecting you. Really? I slid the handwritten document across the desk. Is that what you call this? Dad's face went ashen white as he recognized his own writing. Mom grabbed it, scanning quickly. Where did you get this? She whispered. Turns out your perfect son wasn't so careful with his files during the bankruptcy, Sabrina spoke up. Amazing what people leave behind when they're running from creditors. You went through our private papers. Dad's voice rose. Like you went through my medical records? I countered, using my therapy sessions after Mom's cancer scare to build a case against my stability? Mom flinched. We never stopped lying. I slammed my hand on the desk. It's all here. Every manipulation, every planned conversation, every orchestrated family meeting to convince me I couldn't handle my own inheritance. We were trying to protect you. No, you were protecting him. I pulled out more documents. Here's Jonah's first failed business, covered up with my trust fund money. Here's the second one, buried under refinance loans. Here's the email where you plan to use my emotional problems as leverage if I ever discovered the truth. Tears streamed down Mom's face. Dad just stared at his own handwriting. Did you ever actually believe in me? I asked quietly. Or was I just the backup plan for when Jonah inevitably failed? You don't understand, Dad started. I understand perfectly. I understand that you gaslit me for years. Made me question my own judgment, my own memories. I understand that you chose Jonah's gambling addiction, yes, I know about that too, over my stability. He needed help. Mom pleaded. And I didn't? When I wanted to open that art gallery, when I had actual business plans and market research, where was your help then? That was different, Dad muttered. Yes, it was. Because I would have succeeded. I stand up. Just like I'm succeeding now. By destroying our family? Mom asked. No, you did that. I'm just refusing to play my assigned role anymore. My phone buzzed again. A text from Noel, foundations are clear. Ready when you are. The retreat center opens in 3 months, I told them. It's already fully booked for the first year. Turns out my emotional understanding of people makes for good business planning. Rosalie, Dad tried one last time. We can still fix this, as a family. We stopped being a family the day you decided I was a problem to manage rather than a daughter to support. I gathered the documents. These copies are yours to keep. The originals are with my lawyer. Is this blackmail? Dad asked incredulously. No, it's closure. I don't want anything from you anymore. I just want you to know that I know. That I've always known, on some level. And that I'm done letting you write my story. They sat there, defeated, clutching the evidence of their betrayal. Sabrina will show you out, I said, turning to the window. Don't contact me again unless it's through my attorney. After they left, Sabrina returned to find me still staring out the window. You okay? No, I admitted. But I will be. I picked up my phone to text Noel back. Start the next phase. It's time to build something new. The sun set over the construction site in the distance, where tomorrow concrete would be poured into the space where my past once stood. Sometimes, I'm learning, you have to break ground to break free. The local cafe buzzed with morning regulars when Jonah burst in, making a beeline for my table. I'd been expecting this. News travels fast in small towns, especially news about multi-million-dollar wellness retreats nearing completion. You're going to destroy this family, he announced loudly, drawing every eye in the place. I took a calm sip of my coffee. Pretty sure you already did that with your investment schemes. At least I was trying to build something. He slammed his hands on my table. Not tear everything down out of spite. Is that what you call defrauding retirees, building something? The cafe fell silent. Jonah's face reddened. You don't know what you're talking about, he hissed. Actually, I do. I pulled out my tablet. Mr. Peterson, the retired teacher who lost his pension. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had to sell her house. Should I go on? That was business, he sputtered. Sometimes investments don't pan out. Funny how none of your investments ever pan out, but you always manage to walk away unscathed. Well, until now. A man approached our table. Mike, one of the contractors who bid on the retreat project. Sorry to interrupt, Mike said, not sounding sorry at all, but I couldn't help overhearing. You're Jonah, right? The one who offered me 10 grand to delay construction? Jonah's face went from red to white. What? I set down my coffee. Yeah. Approached me right after I submitted my bid, Mike continued. Said he'd pay cash if I found problems with the foundation work. That's why I withdrew my bid. Didn't want any part of that mess. You're lying. Jonah snapped. Got the texts to prove it. Mike pulled out his phone. Want to see them? I waved him off. No need. This is exactly what I'd expect from my brother. You think you're so perfect? Jonah sneered. Little Rosie finally getting her revenge. This isn't revenge. I stood up slowly. This is consequences. Something you've managed to avoid your entire life. Like protecting our family by stealing my inheritance? By manipulating mom and dad? By trying to sabotage my project? The cafe owner, Maria, stepped forward. I think you should leave, sir. Stay out of this. Jonah warned. No, you stay out of this, Maria replied firmly. Rosalie's been coming here for years. She's good people. You're just making a scene. Other regulars started to stand. The morning crowd knew me. They'd watched me plan this project for months, seen me work with local vendors, hire local staff. You've turned everyone against me, Jonah accused. No, you did that all on your own. I gathered my things. Just like you turned mom and dad's retirement into your personal gambling fund. That's not true. Here's what's true, Jonah. The retreat opens in 2 weeks. It's fully booked for a year. I've hired 30 local people, partnered with 15 local businesses, and created something that will actually help people. While we're homeless, you have options. I gave you lists of apartments, job resources, but instead of using them, you're here trying to intimidate me in public. Because you're heartless, he spat. You don't care about family at all. My phone buzzed. A text from Noel, gates are being installed today. Want to come see? I looked back at Jonah, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the golden boy, not the successful son, just a desperate man who never learned to stand on his own. You're right, I said quietly. I don't care about family, at least not the way you define it. Family isn't about loyalty to lies. It's not about sacrificing one child for another. And it's definitely not about what you and our parents did to me. Rosalie, I'm done. I pulled out an envelope and handed it to him. This is an official notice. You, Mom, and Dad are banned from the property. Try to enter, and you'll be arrested for trespassing. You can't do this. I already did. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Jonah. The next time you try to bribe one of my contractors, make sure they don't know me first. The cafe erupted in quiet murmurs as I left. Through the window, I saw Maria pointing Jonah toward the exit. Outside, I text Noel back. On my way, save me a spot with a good view. My phone rings. It's Mom. I decline the call and see her voicemail pop up immediately. Rosie, please. Your father's not well. This stress is killing him. We need to talk about this as a family. I delete it without listening further. They had 7 years to talk as a family. Now they can talk to my lawyers. The morning sun felt warm on my face as I drove toward the property. My property. Toward the gates that would finally, permanently, keep my past where it belongs. They're here, Noel said quietly, touching my arm. We stood behind the newly installed security booth, watching my family's car approach the gates. The morning fog hadn't lifted yet, making the scene feel almost dreamlike. The wrought iron gates gleamed despite the mist, the gold lettering catching what little sunlight broke through. Harper Sanctum, Private Retreat. EST by Rosalie Harper. Their car stopped for a moment. Nobody moved. You don't have to do this, Noel reminded me. Security can handle it. No, I straightened my jacket. I need to see their faces. They exited the car slowly, taking in the transformation. Where a humble cottage once stood now rose an elegant complex of modern buildings connected by stone pathways and meditation gardens. The old oak trees framed it perfectly, just as Noel predicted they would. What? Mom's voice broke. What have you done? Created something beautiful, I said, stepping into view. Something worthy of the land you tried to steal. Steal? Dad's face flushed. We gave you every opportunity to do what you wanted. To be who you wanted. To sign what you wanted, I interrupted. I gestured to the retreat center. This is who I actually am. Jonah walked up to the gates, gripping the bars. This is insane. You've lost your mind. Actually, I pressed a button on my phone and the fountain in the central garden sprung to life. I found it. Found myself. No thanks to any of you. Please, Mom stepped forward. We can still fix this. We're staying at that horrible motel. Your father's health is declining. Don't, I cut her off. Don't try to manipulate me with guilt. Not anymore. Manipulate? She looked wounded. I'm your mother. Are you? Because mothers don't gaslight their daughters. They don't use therapy sessions against them. They don't, you ungrateful little. Jonah lunged at the gate, making it rattle. Noelle stepped forward, hand raised. That's enough. Step back from the gate. Or what? Jonah sneered. In answer, 2 security guards emerged from the booth, hands on their radios. This is private property, I said calmly. And you've been served notice to stay away. Leave now or they'll call the police. You can't do this. Jonah yelled, his voice echoing across the grounds. You can't just take everything. I didn't take anything, I replied. I built this with my own money, my own plans, my own vision. Everything you see here, I created it. While you were destroying people's lives with your schemes, I was building something real. Real? Dad scoffed. A retreat center? This isn't a real business. Our booking revenue says otherwise. I pulled out my phone, showing them the numbers. Fully booked for a year. Waitlist for the next 2 years. Local businesses fighting for partnership opportunities. They stared at the figures, faces dropping as they realized the scale of what I'd built. This could have been different, I continued softly. 7 years ago, when I wanted to start small with an art gallery, you could have supported me instead. You convinced me I was incapable, unstable, unworthy. So, I learned. I grew. I planned. And now, I pressed another button. The gates began to close automatically. Now I don't need your approval anymore. Rosalie! Mom called out desperately. We're your family. No, I shook my head. You're just people who share my DNA. Family doesn't do what you did to me. The gates clicked shut. Through the bars, I watched their faces transform, Mom's tears, Dad's anger, Jonah's hatred. You'll regret this. Jonah spat. You'll end up alone. I'm not alone. I felt Noelle's steady presence behind me. I thought of Sabrina's unwavering support. I remembered the community that had rallied around this project. I'm just not with you anymore. Security stepped forward, making it clear it was time for them to leave. They retreated to their car slowly, Mom looking back repeatedly, Dad supporting himself on Jonah's arm. As they drove away, Noelle touched my shoulder. You okay? I watched their car disappear into the fog. I don't know. That's fair, he said. Want to walk the grounds? The morning mist makes everything look magical. I looked up at him, this unexpected ally who became something more. Yeah, I managed a small smile. Show me those yoga platforms you were talking about. As we walked the winding paths, the sun finally broke through, illuminating the retreat center in all its glory. My vision made real, my inheritance reclaimed, my life finally my own. Behind us, the gates stood firm, their golden letters catching the light. Harper Sanctum. Not just a name anymore, but a promise, a sanctuary, a new beginning. And this time, I held all the keys. The morning of Harper Sanctum's opening day. I sat in my office, watching the sunrise paint the meditation gardens in gold. A stack of letters sat on my desk, all from my family, all unopened. A knock at my door. "Ready?" Sabrina asked, poking her head in. "Almost." I picked up the letters. "Just need to do one last thing." Outside, the stone fire pit still held embers from last night's test run. I dropped the letters in, watching them catch flame. "You're not even curious what they say?" Sabrina asked. "I know what they say. More guilt, more manipulation, more." Actually, a voice interrupted. "They say, I'm sorry." I turned to find a woman standing there, mid-30s, familiar features that took me a moment to place. Amanda. I hadn't seen my cousin since. We were teenagers. "Hey, stranger." She stepped forward. "Got your invitation to the opening." Bold move. Sending one to the whole extended family. I wanted them to see, I admitted, what I built. "Oh, they see." She gestured to the retreat center. "And they're talking about how you did this alone. How they were wrong. Even Penelope, your mom, she's been different." "Different how?" "Honest, for once. About what they did to you. About Jonah's gambling. About all of it." Amanda sat on one of the meditation benches. "Dad showed me those documents you found, the ones about their plan to take your inheritance." I sat beside her. And it made me sick, because I remembered how they treated you back then. How we all just watched it happen. The fire pit crackled, consuming the last of the letters. "I should have stood up for you," Amanda continued. "We all should have." "Why didn't you?" "Because it was easier not to. Because Jonah was so convincing. Because," she stopped. "No, no more excuses." Noelle approached with clipboard in hand. "First guests arrive in an hour. Need anything?" "Just a minute," I told him. He nodded, understanding. "You know what really got me?" Amanda said after he left. "That art gallery idea of yours. I found your old business plan in Dad's files. It was brilliant. Would have worked perfectly in that downtown area." "That's ancient history," I sighed. "Is it?" "Because this place," she gestured around, "this is that same vision, just bigger, better. You took their rejection and turned it into something extraordinary." The morning sun caught the retreat center's windows, making them gleam like mirrors. "They're not coming today, are they?" I asked quietly. "No. But not because they don't want to. Because they finally understand they don't have the right." Amanda stood. "They're getting help, you know. All of them. Real help. Not just throwing money at problems. Good for them." "Good for you," she corrected. "Because you forced them to face themselves. Your success here, it's not just a business triumph. It's a mirror showing them exactly who they are." Noelle returned. "Sorry, but we really need to review the opening ceremony schedule." "Go," Amanda said. "Do your thing. Just keep sending those invitations, okay? Some of us are listening now." After she leaves, Noelle handed me the clipboard. "Interesting conversation." "Unexpected," I replied, "like everything else lately." He smiled. Speaking of unexpected, he pulled out a small package. Early housewarming gift. Or retreat warming, I guess. Inside was a handmade sign, carved from wood, "Welcome to Harper Sanctum, where healing begins." "You made this." "That poetry reading contractor thing isn't just for show," he shrugged. "Thought it might look good by the entrance." I traced the letters with my finger. "It's perfect. Like someone else I know," he said softly. Before I could respond, guests started arriving. Early birds, eager to be first through the gates. I watched them enter, faces bright with anticipation. Ready to welcome them home? Noelle asked. Home. Such a loaded word. But looking at my retreat center, at the gardens designed for healing, the spaces built for growth, the gates that now protect instead of imprison, I realized something. You know what Amanda said about this place being a mirror? Yeah. She's wrong. It's not a mirror showing them who they are. I took his hand. It's a mirror showing me who I've become. The morning bell chimed, calling the first guests to orientation. My staff, all local, all carefully chosen, began their choreographed welcome. Time to begin, I said. No, Noelle squeezed my hand. Time to continue. You began long ago, when you first refused to believe their lies about who you were. Together, we walked toward the gathering crowd. The fire pit's flames had died, the letters nothing but ash. Behind us, the gates stood open, not to the past, but to possibility. And for the first time since this all began, I felt completely, utterly, free.